It's funny. I think that's what allowed me, or why, the Bulls took an interest in me. I was the last cut of the Bulls in '96, but you had to learn that triangle offense, and they enjoyed big guards. They didn't really have a strategic point guard, but Magic and Pippen kind of played that same role. But because of my size and able to handle the ball, I made it to the last cut of the Bulls. But it was just great to try to understand that offense and really understand what it was to be that size and be able to do so many things. I could play the 1, 2, and 3 by the time I came out of college.
Wow. You're right. Because MJ, Ron Harper, Pippen, they all kind of played that same role. I mean, there was really no defined point guard, or they all just. So I mean, interesting for a team that won all those championships to not even have a defined point guard is very fascinating.
It's fascinating to watch. Fascinating.
And really, no true big man scorer. I mean, no disrespect to Dennis or Luke or those guys, but they didn't have an Olajuwon or a Shaq. It was just the wings really that did a lot of the scoring.
It was funny. It was like a piece to a puzzle. Will Perdue, Bill Cartwright, Jason Williams, they all kind of fit. Dickie Simpkins, they all fit that big man, not really in the post, but could hit a mid-range jumper and was able to kind of pass. They didn't have, like you say, a drop-in post. Okay, let me get 15 to 20 and drop it inside. It was like a piece of the puzzle. Every year they filled that void with that big man. Bill Whittington, you name it. They all kind of same prototype.
Exactly. And again, obviously they had MJ and Pip, so we know that they had dynamic talent. But still, I mean, you look at the recipe for championships, it was, at that time, that wasn't the recipe, as far as most teams had a big man, that Patrick Ewings and Robinson and Dream, those guys, or you won, you had a point guard like Magic or Stockton or guys like that. You didn't necessarily win by having, athletic wings that could all kind of score and the triangle offense and all that, and bigs that really served a role, like you said, and weren't, meant to score. That was just uncommon at that time. So the fact that they won 6 championships, shows you how great Michael was and how great Scotty was, and Phil Jackson and Tex Winter and all those guys.
It's funny, Mike and Pip tend to take the credit, but Phil was just an amazing coach of the mind to keep all those personalities in sync, not having the ego. I really got to understand him as a coach. He had what we call a war room. That's what we had our videotapes, was just all strategic figures from war. And he just tapped into everyone's mindset. Even how he dealt with Dennis was, he was having trouble. They were having trouble with San Antonio. He came to Chicago. It was no problem. And I think a sleeper is Ron Harper and Tony Kukoc. 6'7", left-handed. Like, you sleep on those two guys, but they played a big role.
I mean, I'm from Cleveland, and Ron obviously was a Cav to start his career. Yeah. And one of the worst. Yeah, that we won't get into that whole trade, but people forget the Cavs had a squad back then. You had Brad Daugherty and Price and Elo and Hot Rod Williams and Larry Nance and Harper. That was a squad. And if it wasn't for MJ, that team, in the Bad Boy Pistons, that team was probably the third best team in the East back then. Yeah. In the late 80s, early 90s. So Mark Price is probably the most underrated point guards of that entire era. And I've talked to a couple other former point guards who told me that kid was, he's incredible. And he was the original pick and roll point guard, him, almost like a Stockton, and he had a lot of variations to his game. And Brad Daugherty was one of the top 10 centers that era. So anyways, Harper, I remember in the Last Dance, he talked about how on the shot, he wanted to guard MJ, and they put Craig Elo, and Lenny put Craig Elo on him. And he's like, I don't know what to say. And I'm not saying it would have been different. It's MJ, but who knows? You never know. I mean, but you're right. Ron was extremely underrated on those Bulls teams. I think he never gets the credit he deserves. But him and Kukoc, like you said, are probably the two most underrated guys on that team, because the big three, Rodman, Pip, MJ, of course they get most of the credit. But